the Cougar Tailgate, where BYU fandom lives. Here's your host, Lauren McLean.
What's up, everyone? I'm Lauren McLean. It's officially been 1 year since the sports world shut down. How's everyone holding up? Luckily, there have been some fun things that tied us over during the year while we waited and still wait for the day we get to enter our favorite arena, stadium, or venue to watch our team again. Joining me today is my pal, Jason Shepard. Shep, what's up, my friend?
How you doing, Lauren? It has been a long time. Like we used to get together every week to do this, and then things just got crazy. You had another child. Things got a little busier.
Wow.
I have not seen you. I've seen pictures of you and your baby, but I have not seen you since. How is being a mother of two now?
Well, it ain't for the faint of heart, Shep, and you would know this. It is.
Wait till you have
is something
4.
else. It's well, that's not going to happen for me. But yes, 2 is definitely harder than 1. But he is a sweetheart. Memphis is such a sweet baby, and so that makes it a lot easier. He's over 2 months old. And wow, life has changed.
Life has certainly changed, but it's good to talk to you. It's always good to do shows with you.
Yes, and I know you've been super busy with sports going on. There's so many different sports going on right now, which is so much fun for fans. But let's talk about the number one sporting event that gave us joy and kept us going during the year where we couldn't really go and participate in sports in person. So I'm going to go first, okay?
Okay.
So mine was BYU's football season. Obviously, guys, it was just absolutely incredible. It was something that was thrown together by Tom Homo, and congratulations to him, by the way, Athletic Director of the Year, well deserved.
Yeah.
I think that is so significant and so awesome for him. It put Zach Wilson on the map as one of the top draft picks in 2021. It was just such a fun season to watch, and so it just helped with the sting of not being able to watch it in person.
Yeah,
what would you say, Shep?
Yeah, I think I'm probably going the same direction as you. I'm going to go with BYU football, but I want to go back before I get into why BYU football, and a lot of it will be some of the reasons that you gave. But I remember when all of this went down a year ago, and I was actually watching the Jazz game that night and getting ready for the Jazz to take on Oklahoma City. So I was watching the broadcast, which was really the first domino to fall with Rudy testing positive and that game going. And then by the evening, the NBA had shut down. And then the next day you had college basketball. So, but I still remember thinking, and boy, how naive was I at the time. I remember thinking, oh, well, I'm sure it'll all be back in like 2 or 3 weeks. And I mean, we just had no idea.
Cursed it, Chip.
Seriously, like we had no idea what we were all in for. But yeah, I think I'm probably going with football. And the reason I'm going with football was because there was no guarantee that football season was ever going to happen. We didn't, and because BYU is so unique as an independent, so you have that you have to deal with. You don't have built-in conference games that you can fall back on for half of your schedule. So the fact that, and you referenced Tom Holmoe, who just is a fantastic athletic director, and I agree with you 100%, could not have deserved the award for best athletic director more than what he did for this year. But just the fact that we went from not knowing if there was going to ever be a season to having a full schedule and BYU playing almost all of those games. There was only one game that was postponed and ultimately canceled. It was with Army. Everything else BYU was able to do. And not only did you have the fact that the games were being played, but you had BYU performing at such a high level and gaining national attention. It was such an unexpected and in a very good way season for BYU football that really is the one that stands out to me.
And it has so many implications for that one season. I think for having all that national attention for a while there, being the only team in the West playing football, and then you have Zach Wilson getting all this attention. And now, look, we have the Nakua brothers that are joining the team. I think there's so many implications from that season that will still come to fruition in the future, just by the fact that they gained so much national attention. Do you agree with that?
I agree. And look, we know because we're around BYU and we have grown up as fans before we ever got into this business, we know what type of brand BYU was, and will continue to be. So I thought it was nice, though, after a little bit of a lull on the national, in the national spotlight, to be able to have that type of season where people are talking about Zach Wilson. They're talking about an unbelievable offense that just can't be stopped. They're talking about a game between BYU and Coastal Carolina that was put together, within a couple of days. And obviously that one didn't go the way of the Cougars, which really stinks. But all of the things that happened, Zach's now going to be, in all likelihood, the second overall pick in the NFL draft. And this is something from a recruiting standpoint, Lauren. Look, BYU can milk this for a while. This is something. This is what you are wanting if you're going into a recruit's house. Like, look at this. And then you talked about getting the Nakua brothers in. That is, yes, they're from here, so there's that built-in tie-in. They have that they were raised in this area. But that's talent that wants to come here. They're not coming here if they don't think they have a chance to win at a high level.
Yes, that's exactly right. So thank heavens for football, Shep. Thank heavens for football. Football is king, and that's not an understatement. It just is the truth. And so when the team is doing well, and especially during a pandemic, because all eyes are on them, right? Because people need that. People are wanting that during this time of fear and uncertainty, and to have this team, BYU football team, just do so well under the strange circumstances was so much fun. Well, so much fun to be a part of.
And the other thing, and I think this is maybe beyond just any single sport, I think really the thing that stands out, and this goes to Tom Holmoe again, at the head of this athletic department, making sure that things were implemented that allowed these players to play regardless of the sport. The fact that BYU, honestly, if you look up and down all of the different schedules, if there was a game or a meet or a match that was postponed, I want to say like 98% of that. I don't remember BYU getting rid of a game because of something at BYU. It was always the opposition. So not only were they able to play all of these games, but they were able to do it safely, and I think that speaks volumes to the athletic department.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, let's move on. Also in honor of the painful year of not attending sporting events and the positive projection of venues letting more fans in, let's talk about which sport is the best to watch live in person as a fan, Shep. I want you to go first with this one.
See, there's so many. I'm such a sports nut in general. I mean, I'm the guy that does this for a living, and I'll listen to sports radio on my way home, and then when I get home, I'll turn on a game. I mean, so like that's like people say
and
you
your
have
wife
to
loves it.
Yeah, seriously. We're about to celebrate 20 years of marriage, and I'm not sure she's still used to all of the sports that has come into our home over the last 2 decades. But
sorry, Heather.
Yeah. I think for me, being in person, I think it's probably basketball.
Okay, that is not what I thought you were going to say.
Well, look, I love being at a baseball game. You know how much I love baseball. I love football, but the thing with football, most of my football viewing has been as a media member. And so I'm a little bit removed from it. Obviously, I went to BYU games growing up, but that was so long ago that I think the fact that you're in a stadium that's 20,000 or smaller for basketball, and that energy and everybody's so close to the court, I think that all of that combined probably is why I go with basketball. To see a really good basketball game live, whether it's BYU, whether it's going to a Jazz game, like I have so many great memories going to a basketball game. I think that's probably where I would go. And a very close second is baseball, just because I love baseball so much.
See, and that's for sure what I thought was going to be your number one. But I agree with you with basketball. Here's the thing. It gets a little bit hot in those indoor arenas, right? So much fun, so loud. But I have to go with football. It is so loud, these huge, giant venues. Everyone can get a little bit more rowdy, which could be good and bad, I guess. But because it's outside, the fall weather, Shep, you can't get any better than that fall weather. It starts out a little warm as the season progresses. It gets a little more chilly. Start putting on your jackets. Oh, something about that fall weather I just absolutely love. I'm going to have to go with football. And I'm sure it just kind of boils down to what's your favorite sport, even though I know baseball is your favorite and you said basketball. But for most people, it probably boils down to what is your favorite sport? And that's
Right.
what's going to be the most fun for you to attend.
Well,
And football is my absolute favorite. And I just, like you, I have these amazing memories growing up going to BYU football games and other football games and even high school football games I love going to. There's just something about Friday Night Lights. And I also, as a media member, was able to be a sideline reporter on the sideline of football games, which, I mean, you can't beat that.
You can't beat
right?
that,
So,
yeah. Well,
so,
and
so football wins for me.
The other part about football, and it goes to a lot of what you were talking about, is it's one of those sports that's still an event because it's not. It's once a week. You're playing one game a week. Now, obviously,
exactly.
You have games. Sometimes you have games on Thursday. Sometimes you have games on Friday and Saturday. But it's still one a week. So it's still more of an event than say a basketball team's week where they play 2 or 3 games, or a 3 or 4 game series in baseball. Football is still once a week, and you in college you're only playing 12, 13 games. In the NFL you're playing 16 in a regular season, so it's very limited, which adds then to the excitement that it's a football game day.
Oh yeah, you have to relish each game because you only get 12, right? I love it.
Yep.
All right, coming up, Selection Sunday is tomorrow, and we're going to select our top memories of the most obscure opponents BYU has faced in the Big Dance. Plus, let's get to know more about the state where all the madness is happening this year. This is Cougar Tailgate. Welcome back to Cougar Tailgate. I'm Lauren McLean. Selection Sunday is where the tournament committee reveals the 68 teams selected to compete for a chance to win the NCAA National Championship. BYU men's hoops is projected 7 seeds, so we'll see what happens tomorrow. Because so many teams from different conferences get selected, it brings out a lot of obscure teams that nobody has heard of, and oftentimes making a nice run in the tournament. So Shep and I decided to select the most random team we remember BYU playing in the tournament. Shep, what is your number 1 pick?
See, this one was really difficult for me because I don't remember obscure. I remember the one that immediately came to mind was Iona, where BYU was down. It was 25 points, and they set an NCAA record coming back and actually winning that game. And it was Noah Hartsock,
right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Noah Hartsock was the stud of that game. That's the one that stands out to me. I've got other thoughts on other teams BYU's played, but in terms of the random, just kind of obscure team, that's the one that stands out. What about for you?
All right, I'm going to go with the Wofford Terriers. The Wofford Terriers. Do you remember? So obviously, no one's going to forget this because it was Jimmer's run in the NCAA tournament in 2011.
I was there,
and it was the first round, and so was I. And that's why it sticks out to me because I remember it was in Denver, first round of the NCAA tournament. I remember being like, "I'm sorry, Wofford? Is this an actual team? Is that an actual name?
Is this pronounced Walford, and we're just mispronouncing it? What do we?
Is this Wofford? What is this?" Yeah, the Wofford Terriers from Spartanburg, South Carolina, and they actually are in the tournament almost every single year. And I had never noticed them before 2011 whatsoever. So that to me was the most obscure team that I remember because actually they did better against Jimmer and the Cougars in 2011 than Gonzaga did.
That's right.
In the second round of that tournament. So they were actually a really good team. And one of my memories that sticks out is the Wofford cheerleaders. Every time Jimmer Fredette would go to their side of the court, they would just giggle and they were like, "Oh my gosh," because he was like the biggest thing, right, in the college landscape, national college landscape. So they were loving every second of Jimmer Fredette, and that stood out to me because I'm like, how do you choose to go to Wofford, and how do you even hear of it? I guess if you're from South Carolina, right?
Yes, exactly. If you're from the area, obviously. Yeah, and it's funny that you bring up that specific run because that's kind of where I wanted to go with not so much obscure team, but that run because it's funny because I don't remember seeing you at that tournament at the Pepsi Center in Denver.
Because I was a student.
I was there as well. Oh, so you were not covering it?
We were covering. We were covering it as students.
I see what you're saying. Yes, I see what you're saying. So,
Shep, we were just puny little students. You weren't gonna recognize. It's all right.
No. That is not that at all. But I remember being there in that run. And now, did you end up going to New Orleans after they advanced past that round?
We didn't. No, we just went to Denver.
Okay, so
for the first 2 rounds.
So I was lucky enough that the station I was at the time was willing to fork over the money to send me to not only the round in Denver against Wofford and then against Gonzaga, but then also to be able to go to New Orleans and be part of that. But what I wanted to bring up was the year before that season. What I remember is this was kind of the beginning of Jimmer Mania. You remember BYU goes to the NCAA Tournament, and in the first round they take on Florida. They win that game at double overtime, but Jimmer still wasn't Jimmer yet. But then you fast forward another year later, they're taking on Florida again, and Jimmer's Jimmer. I mean, it's Jimmer Mania. It's everything. And I just remember that from one year to the next, against the same program, BYU versus Florida, the difference in the attention that BYU and specifically Jimmer was getting from one year to the next. It was just night and day.
So true. And unfortunately, they ended up losing in overtime, right? One overtime.
Yeah, it was. They lost the game to the Gators. And, an opportunity. A lot of people thought that was a Final Four team and maybe a national championship team. But I know most people expected that team, if everything had worked out in their favor, that they could have been a Final Four team.
And if Brandon Davies was able to play in that game, it maybe would have made a difference. But regardless, it was a fantastic team. They had a chance to win, and they just couldn't quite pull it off.
Yeah, that was such a fun run. And something else I remember about that trip, growing up, are you a bread pudding fan, by the way? So you never know where I'm going to go with this stuff.
I'm not 80 years old.
I didn't say you put raisins.
So no.
I didn't say you put raisins in it. Okay, growing up.
Okay, bread pudding. Go ahead.
So I had never tried it before, and we're in New Orleans. And like, oh, you got to try this bread pudding. It was so good. So now I kind of incorporate bread pudding and New Orleans together. So it's just one of those weird things.
Because that's definitely not what I think.
No, I mean, I also had some really good stuff. I had the red beans and rice, which was great down there.
Ooh, now you're speaking my language.
But see, this was the dessert with the meal that was red beans and rice, and then it had like the red beans and rice had like the chunks of sausage in it. Oh, it was so good. But then for dessert, it was bread pudding. And I was like, okay, I'm a fan now. I'm down. I'm down with it. But no raisins. No raisins.
Well, now I got to try it because to be fair, I haven't even tried bread pudding. It just sounds like something an 85-year-old man with no teeth would eat.
I would say the elderly do enjoy some bread pudding.
All right. Well, speaking of bread pudding, just kidding. Speaking of the NCAA tournament, it was announced.
No.
Speaking of the elderly, it was announced in January that the entire 2021 men's basketball championship will be played in Indiana, with the majority of the tournament's 67 games taking place in Indianapolis. And the games will be played on 2 courts inside Lucas Oil Stadium, that's his Colts Stadium, as well as Bankers Life Fieldhouse, where the Pacers play, Hinkle Fieldhouse, Butler, Indiana Farmers Coliseum, Mackey Arena in West Lafayette, which is where Purdue is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Shep here, Simon Scott, I believe, Scott.
I am not
sure.
It's
spelled SKJODT.
Anyone? So the J is silent, we're assuming?
Silent J. Sure, I'm going to go Scott. Simon Scott Assembly Hall in Bloomington, where Indiana University is, the Hoosiers. So I got to tell you a quick story. I'm going to toot my own horn here for a minute. Speaking of Indiana, this was 1998, Shep. I was 12 years old. Do you remember two-ball, NBA two-ball? Do you remember that?
No, I don't.
Sponsored by McDonald's. All right, okay. Well, you had a partner. They used to do this in the NBA as well for All-Star Weekend, but you have a partner, and there's different spots on the court, and you see how many points you can make. You go back and forth in like 1 minute. So my friend and I did this in our regional area, and we won. And we kept winning until we went to the state. So we got to shoot at halftime of the Jazz game for the state championship. We happened to win, and we thought it was going to stop there. So I'm only 12 years old, mind you. So we got to meet like Karl Malone, John Stockton. Brian Russell was my hero for some reason. Of all the guys on that team, I loved Brian Russell. So we got to meet all those guys. It was like a little kid's dream. It was an incredible year. We thought that's where it ended. we got a call 2 weeks later. I was in elementary school. Our parents came to the school with these balloons telling us that we had the top score in the nation and that they were flying us to Indianapolis, Indiana to shoot at halftime of the Cavs-Pacers playoff game for the national championship. So they flew us out there in 98. So we're talking Larry Bird is the head coach. Reggie Miller is the star of the Pacers. So we got to meet those guys. We got to shoot at halftime against these girls from Detroit. And they played the Rocky soundtrack as we were walking out on the court, which was a dream of mine. Yes, and we actually won. So
You're a national champion?
National champion. It was then called the Market Square Arena, where the Pacers play. So now it's the Bankers Life Fieldhouse.
Well, it's a completely different building
now. National championship on that. Oh, yes, you're right. It is a totally
different building now.
Well, Shep, still awesome. You know what I'm saying? It was, yeah.
So I remember seeing a picture of you at the Jazz game. Like it was like on Instagram or something you had posted. And so I knew you had done something. I did not know that you had gone all the way to win the whole thing.
We did. We won it. It was
I had no
incredible.
idea.
Yeah, I peaked at 12 years old. Most people, they say they peak in high school. I was 12. I peaked at 12 years old. So it was an awesome. So the point is, I have some very fond memories of Indiana and Indianapolis. So since all the games are being played in Indiana, I thought we better get to know the state a little better.
Okay.
Shep, so I'm going to hit you with some knowledge right now.
Bring it.
The Hoosier State brought a Bird. We know that, right?
Larry Bird.
So I'm going to give you 10 facts. That's the first one. Larry Bird from Indiana. The gas pump was invented in Indiana.
Really?
You're going to like this one. The first professional baseball game was in Indiana, in Fort Wayne.
Oh, I like that. That's not bad.
Number 4, the Indianapolis 500, also known as the greatest spectacle in racing, is in Indiana, as we know. Indiana has generated the 5th highest number of professional basketball players per capita of any state. 5th highest. I mean,
they are known.
It would be cool if it was number 1. But.
Yeah, that's what they're known as, is a basketball state. That's why they're the Hoosiers. I mean, that's why they're the Indiana Hoosiers. There's a movie called Hoosiers.
That's right. And speaking of, did you know that no one knows where the term Hoosiers came from? Not even people from Indiana know what it means.
There's not a wiki. There's not a wiki for that?
No, listen, I did a lot of research, and they have a lot of different theories of where the name came from, but no one actually knows what it means. So they are the Indiana Hoosiers, and they're like, don't ask us what that is, because we don't know.
Really? That's kind of strange that some sort of historian doesn't have something on that.
Well, listen, Chip, we don't all have the answers.
I guess not. I guess you just have to go with faith.
Well, there was a guy named Hoosier his last name was Hoosier back in the day. They think it might be from him. They think it might be a word that derived from something. I don't know.
You mean like Rick Hoosier?
You can go to the research.
It's like Rick Hoosier that lives down the street. You're gonna name it after Rick?
Let's be the Hoosiers. Rick, he's a good guy.
Let's be the Hoosiers. Rick Hoosier. He was kind to everyone. Let's just go with that.
I'm gonna do that now. I'm gonna find some obscure guy on my street and make that the name of my basketball team. All right. The small town of Santa Claus receives tens of thousands of Christmas letters each year, and volunteers have been writing back to the children's letters since 1914.
Okay, I did know this. I have heard of Santa Claus, Indiana, yes.
Oh, and I love that they do that. That's darling. So fun. All right. Number, I think we're on 8. About 20% of the popcorn sold in the United States was grown in Indiana, and this made me so happy because I am a huge popcorn fan. Are you, Shep?
I do enjoy some popped corn, yes.
Are you like movie popcorn guy? Are you hot buttered at home?
No,
caramel?
I don't do the butter. Like when we go to the movies, we get no butter because it's already butter flavored. I don't need the extra gunk on it.
Okay.
And that's what it's called. That is actually the technical term for it. It is called gunk. It's really it's the brand name. It's the brand name.
Okay, but you're talking about movie popcorn. But like if you just pop it at home, do you put on butter then?
I don't put extra butter on it. We'll get buttered flavor. I will tell you.
Now you're talking microwave popcorn. I'm talking you get a popper.
I have not popped popcorn in 20 years. If I'm getting it, I'm going microwave popcorn. Or I'm going to one of those specialty popcorn places and I'm getting cinnamon popcorn, which is my favorite.
Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. I've never
fantastic.
had that.
It's fantastic.
Where do you get that?
I don't know. There's different places like popcorn places. There was one when we lived up in Salt Lake County that we would go to out at the district, but we don't live up there anymore, so I don't know where one is in Utah County.
All right, anyone listening to this, reach out to Shep and I and tell us where we can get some cinnamon popcorn.
Oh, cinnamon popcorn is the best.
Sounds so good. All right, number 9 and 10. Gary, Indiana was not only the birthplace of Professor Harold Hill. Name that movie, Shep. Movie/musical.
If we're in musicals, I don't know.
The Music Man.
Oh,
The Music Man.
I've never
Professor
seen it.
Harold Hill is the lead. Oh, I'm learning so many things about Shep. Bread pudding and doesn't know.
Yeah, talk about old people.
Talking about
true. The Music Man.
That's totally true. That's fair. All right, but it was also the birthplace of the Jackson 5.
Oh, that's right.
Hello, Indiana.
Yes.
And number 10, random, David Letterman.
Yeah, oh yeah.
He was also born in. What would we do without David Letterman?
Look,
so there you go, guys.
One of the staples of late night.
He is. He really is. All right, so those were your 10 random facts about Indiana. So now you're going to be a little more jazzed and excited to watch the NCAA tournament starting next week. All right, Shep, and that does it for us today. Thanks again to Jason Shepard for coming on the show with me. You can join the Cougar Tailgate virtually, of course, every Saturday at noon Mountain Time, or download, rate, and review our podcast on Apple, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spotify, or on BYURadio.org. Selection Sunday tomorrow. This is Cougar Tailgate.